issues. Children and dogs. A nightmare, would you say? It can be, couldn't it? All right. When you're getting that pregnant intake home, or the adoption dog home, or even a house pet that's being raised in the presence of children, who are the first, or in that relationship, what part of that relationship must be the most disciplined? The parents first and the child. Okay? And the other piece to it is, when you have a new rescue coming in, should you immediately put them near the child? Of course, that's common sense. But what if the child wants to go into the crate room? Good. And I'll talk about my own kids, all right? The other thing is how do you introduce? Do you just bring the dog in the room and have the child walk up? Can anybody give me a suggestion? Take the mic so we can have it on tape. This way we can expand it.
All I have was a note.
Right. Does anybody have an idea how to do it? From a distance at first, you think so?
I would do it the same way I do it with cats. I would put the dog in a crate, let the child come up and put it back of the hand to the front of the crate and see how the dog is going to react.
All right. In all honesty, Nancy, that's a good point. But at the same time, you have an incredibly sensitive dog in the early stages. This actually makes the dog more defensive because of the shelter it's in. What I usually do, and we'll go back to Dexter, is 4 or 5 days with me alone. Then I'll take the dog out, and I'll have my kids sit down. Okay? Now, if you're a good alpha, you can do this, so you guys got to get well versed on the alpha thing. And then I'll sit down, and I'll have my kids sitting next to me, okay? And I'll have the dog sitting here, and I'll pet the dog. My kid's got a hunk of bologna in his hands. And I just get my kid to put it out. Does the kid push into the dog's nose? The dog comes forward. All right? I basically teach my dogs that my kids are a walking hot dog dispensary. All right? And until that dog actually gets excited about seeing my children, it will never, ever interact. Do you think that a dog that sits there quietly and stares at a child is a dog that you should allow the kid to approach? How many people could misread that, though? He's polite. Look. Next thing you know, the kid comes up there and the kid needs plastic surgery. All right? That's the first step. What's the second step I do is once the dog's totally comfortable, I give the kid the leash. I don't care if the dog pulls him down, but kids have fun being pulled down, in all honesty. Other than mine, he gets mad and he says, oh, look, the dog got mud on me. I hate this dog. Right? That's okay, but it's done in steps. Now, the other issue is you want to condition dogs around children. And this is a hard call because kids can be kids. The old days were, how many people in here think that a dog should tolerate a child? Tolerate. Yeah, kid stuff of running around and playing ball, don't chase them. All right. But there's other people who have the mentality that a dog should run up to a kid should run up to a dog because it's sleeping and a dog should tolerate it. Okay, well, I'm glad you all think that way because in my country, people still think that way. All right? There was a dog that attacked a mastiff attacked a 5-year-old child 4 years ago and killed her. 3 months ago, a Rottweiler and Hound Dog cross-type dog that belonged to a father, and they were a divorced family, and the daughter came over. The dogs tore her apart in the yard. 5 years old, killed 2 as well. The root of that all evil is what? These dogs were exposed around children. Why do they bite children? That's a question. Anybody know? Do you think these dogs are psychotic? Do you think they're tilted to the left or the right? What do you think did it? Yeah. Somebody?
At a young age, when the kids are young, when the kids run, it triggers prey chasing.
Yeah.
I also think that, and I just learned this recently, that children are as old as sometime between the age of 3 and 4 before they develop empathy enough to understand that what they do to the dog makes the dog uncomfortable, insecure, anxious, in pain. So, and they don't see them as authority figures until they're between 9 and 12, depending
Even
on
at
the kid and the dog.
even at that age, they don't. But you're right. 3 and 4 is what we call the evil stage of the child. I've got a 3-year-old at home. He's the one who stole my shoelaces off my shoes on Friday or whatever day it was, and I had to run and scramble to buy laces for my shoes so I could wear them for the seminar. But anyway, the key is training the child. Okay, you have to come to common ground. And what I do with my dogs and my kids is my child is always taught in the presence of a dog to stand next to me almost immediately. They do it naturally. Even my 2-year-old does it. They do not approach dogs. All right? Then what happens is he'll ask me, Daddy, can I touch this dog? And I'll say yes or no. Or I'll say, go sit on the chair and I'll introduce you. All right? And he does that. And then, of course, the walking hot dog dispensary. And then the final piece is play ball if you can. Now, do I ask the child to go and take the ball out of the dog's mouth at this stage? No. The child throws another ball. All right? And then the child will lash out, because in my place we had a bunch of toy balls there with Etra, and Etra punctures balls and eats them. You know, like they say the Kong is indestructible. Now, my dog can eat one in 20 minutes. Okay? So he got mad and he winged the ball at my dog. Well, a lot of people sit there and say, forget it, don't worry about it. I picked that little boy up and put him in his room for 3 hours and said, you got a timeout. But only until I winged the ball at him first. Okay? I winged it right at him. I said, do you like that? And he goes to me, no. And I go, so what'd you do it to the dog? Does the dog get my ball? No. So you got to be careful with dogs and children. I think you guys are all on the same page here, that when you introduce, do it in steps. Remember, the child is no different than another dog. And what did we talk about yesterday with Tinker? Bond first. After all, if a dog's going to retaliate you as an adult, so you'll get a wrist or a leg bite or maybe a nip. A child will get what? Lose half his face. Okay? Mm-hmm. No, you never keep a dog away from an infant. As a matter of fact, you keep the dog away from you when the infant is not around. For one. I want you to understand this. I just had 2 children, 3 and 2. And in the house at the time of birth was a 10-year-old cocker, a 12-year-old cocker, and a 9-year-old attack-trained Rottweiler. And everyone's going to go, attack-trained Rottweiler? I want you to understand that this dog was 140 pounds lean. All right? And Jason knows Bear, and when we were doing the protection sequences, just to tell you how powerful this dog is, he knocked Jason flying through a barn door, and an attack sequence of maybe 30 feet. They went through the wooden door and landed on their backs on the ground. And he was throwing him around like he was an old burlap sack when he was 2. So a very powerful dog and attack trained. Well, what I did was, first of all, prior to the children coming home to be born, I start to understand how the dog's got to live. Is a dog allowed in the bedroom where the child is, yes or no? Whatever your rule is, you start to do the rules then, okay? Obedience train your dog, okay? Make damn sure that your dog is not a spoiled, rotten brat. He accepts the crate, one-word commands, you give him time to play, and he's totally calm. Why? Anybody know why? Right, but the other piece to it is if he thinks you're his equal, he may be not so acceptant of the child, would he? And the biggest mistake people make with infants is the minute the infant comes home, they don't realize that life's changed, and they change the dog's life immediately. Now the dog forms resentment. There's an equation with dogs and children. It's either they love that child to death or they hate him. There's no in-between ground. Okay? If you did not put it in a situation where the transference is slow, where you've trained the dog and taught the rules months prior to the baby coming, you're going to have trouble afterwards. Guaranteed. I don't care how good your dog is good with children. All right? Then what happens is you need to do training, one-word commands, and I'll give you the example. My Rottweiler, all my wife has to say is, Bear, I'm disappointed, and he automatically goes in the room. There's no force or no nothing when Bear was alive. But there also was the trust and reassurance that when my wife was carrying Liam, who at 4 o'clock consistently every day screamed till 7 at night, the dog gets antsy. Does anybody notice that? A child screams and a dog gets antsy? Well, you don't correct the dog in that presence. You sit there and you say, it's okay. If you're a good alpha, the dog calms. 2. And then the final piece to it is whether your dog is with children or not, or whatever it is, always teach your dog that there's an out. All right? As good as Etra is with my boys, I'm sitting in the living room and I take one look at her and she looks at me and I go, I know where you want to go. Boom, she runs downstairs. How many people force the issue with the dog and keep that dog there 24/7 with all these screaming kids because they didn't crate train it? Or they can't put it in another room because the dog won't stay there. Teach the dog that independence and isolation is a fact of life because later on it reflects. Okay? I've seen dogs that have never been raised with children that are better with children than dogs that were raised with them. When I hear a dog that's been raised with children, and then they say it's good with children, my flag gets rises right away. That tells me that I have to do 3 times as stringent test than a dog that hasn't been raised. I could imprint a dog properly with a child if it's never been raised, but I cannot undo the damage that a child in an unregulated home has done to a dog with a family. And the final piece is, if the dog is so good with children, why would the family give it up? No, they don't have time. What parent would disappoint their child and make their child cry by getting rid of the dog? In all honesty, we're all parents here, or some of us are. Do you really want to intentionally make your child cry and upset? And if your child cherished the dog, would you get rid of it? I understand, but when you look at it, the final piece to it is why? Misbehavior. Nothing else. The dog might have jumped on the kid, might have mooched out of the food bowl. There could have been an issue of growling or a defense for 1 second of the day. Okay? You're going to get that. So it's a red flag that the dog, in my eyes, has not been raised properly with the children. There's always an issue. Yes.
I should have the dog. I forgot where I was going.
No, what you were saying is that when the dog is not around, when you want the dog around with the child. Yes. So you relate all the added attention with the presence of the child. When he's not with the child and the child's sleeping, then have the same schedule. But you also need to give the dog individual time. Okay?
What about, how old would you say a kid should be before they're allowed to be alone with a dog?
Never. Never.
So my kid, when he's 25.
Well, he's not a kid anymore then. He might be a kid with you, but he's not a kid at 25 years old. No.
What do you think that age is? 15?
Yeah, 15.
Okay.
Between the ages of 1 day to 13 years old, I would never leave a dog alone with a child. Because the other piece to it is if your dog truly loves children, children play fight, like the Mastiff that killed a little girl. And when you watch the instance, the dog was there for an hour and everything was fine till the 2 little girls got into a fight over a Barbie doll. Parents left them alone. The girl that didn't belong pushed the girl that belonged down. What did the dog do? What was natural? Okay, I have children coming over my house. I live in the country, so it's not one kid that comes over from next door. It's a planned event, and I got 30 kids over. Believe me. My wife warns me in advance and says, stay at the office. Sherry's kids are coming over, and they are brats. But the bottom rule is that actually Sherry is on the video. But if you guys notice something, if you were to watch my video, there's my 2 boys there. There's the 2 cockers, a poodle, a Rottweiler, and a German Shepherd. 6 dogs, or 5. If you notice, the first thing I've done with the multi-dog, we're going to get into it, is the regulation. But the other piece, too, is that my dogs are always willing to accept kids coming over. Because, like I said, every kid that walks into my door is a walking hot dog factory. Right away. Here, give the dog a weenie. Here. The dog starts looking at kids as if they're weenies. And kids are weenies, guys. Okay? But they also incorporate play. I'll back off on playing with my dog when I have children, other than the one-on-one, and I'll take them out for its walk and everything else. But I'll also include and train the dog. Here's another thing that causes big resentment. You go out for the morning walk with the stroller. Your dog is not conditioned to walk with the stroller, yet the highlight of the dog's day is his walk, and he sees you leaving with the child and you don't take him with you. How many people might have accidentally done that? And I'm not talking about taking the dog to the doctors. I'm just talking about something like that. In my house, it never happens. If there's a dog presence and my wife's taking them for a walk, one of the dogs goes with them. So the dog is included as much as possible. But then you got the other piece, traveling in the car. All right, you got the dog in a baby seat, you got the kids in the baby seat, and you got a dog that jumps all over the damn car. And you know what you're doing? You're screaming at the dog, and the kids are screaming, everybody's screaming, because your dog jumped on the kids. The basic idea of kids and dogs, guys, set aside the rescue intake and the proper way to introduce. It's also the conditioning, because you're going to condition the rescue intake to go into a home with children. So if you have children, wonderful training tool. Teach the dog to ride in the car with the kids. Where's the dog's place in the car? In the front seat? How about in the back seat? Yeah, but what if you can't fit a crate in the back of the car? Because there's baby stuff in there. Well, what if you can't, though? My wife drives a Grand Cherokee, so I've got 2 baby seats in the back. She's driving. By the back time you put the groceries and the stroller in the back, where's there room for the dog? There's one other spot. On the floor. Where? 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 The only guy that goes in the front of my passenger seat of my van is the one who's ready to take over the driving. Okay? But even when we were walking and patrolling with security dogs, I used to teach all my dogs to lay down on the floor. Why? 1, and 2, what's the message I'm giving my dog if it sits on the seat? 1, and 2, have you ever had a dog that puts his paws on your shoulders from the back? Okay, but have you had one that does that? Or he's licking the back of your head? When he's standing on that seat, guys, what is he, taller than you are? What's the mixed signal you're giving your dog? That's right. Oh, Jason, go ahead.